Today on the Give First podcast, really excited to be joined by Kevin Noertker. Kevin leads a company called Ampaire. It's a Techstars company that is in the portfolio, super exciting. And he talks about how to build a company where you're making really big bets and trying to do really hard things. Talks about the importance of having milestones along the way. He calls them invariant milestones, and really clear values and clear mission, especially when you're doing something as big as what you're about to hear on the Give First podcast, coming up right now. Hi, everyone. This is David Cohen, and I'm here with my amazing co-host,
Brad Feld.
Hey, Brad. And this is the Give First podcast. And in the startup world, Give First means simply trying to help anyone, especially entrepreneurs, without any expectation of getting anything back. So we'll be talking to mentors and founders about what Give First looks like in action and how it makes great entrepreneurship possible. We polled everyone, and they said consistently that their favorite part of the show was the legal mumbo jumbo. So here it is. The following discussion is an expression of personal opinion and does not represent the opinion of Techstars or any company we discuss. Our conversations for informational purposes only, including any mention of securities or funds. This is not legal, business, investment, or tax advice and is not intended for use by any investor. Certain of Techstars funds own or may own in the future securities in some of the companies discussed in this podcast. Got it? Kevin, great to see you. Welcome to the Give First podcast. Thanks for being here. We'd like to learn a little bit about you. I know you're a Techstars alum. You've got a really amazing company that we're going to talk about. But before we get to the company, tell us a little bit about your background.
Grew up in a ski town outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. Fell in love with the outdoors. Stars. Thought I would be an astronaut as a kid. You can see over my shoulder an astronaut statue, so maybe it's still in there somewhere. Got my mechanical engineering degree from Caltech, where my research was in robotics at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Worked in the aerospace industry for 7 years before realizing that there was something bigger, more audacious that I needed to be doing with my life, which ultimately led me down the entrepreneurial route.
And that led you to create this amazing company that is trying to change the world. Let's not tease them anymore. Tell people a little bit about Ampaire and the scale, the ambition that you have.
Sure, yeah. So I'm co-founder and CEO of Ampaire, and Ampaire is building the future of aviation. We have engineered hybrid electric propulsion systems that cut fuel burn out of airplanes by 50 to 70%. So our sites are squarely on every aircraft that's under 100 seats. That's where we enter the market, where we're re-engineering planes as well as providing propulsion systems for all the new build planes that are coming out. So this is a really big deal, and it's a really big challenge to address. It's a big deal because aviation has some pretty phenomenal issues that it's facing. First and foremost, the environmental issues, the emissions produced, as well as the noise, local pollution, and burden that it causes on communities. And second is the economics. Like, most communities don't have air service, in particular because it's not really economical to serve them. So by driving these new technology into the industry, we cut the fuel burn down significantly. Fuel is 30% of the cost of operation in an airline. And so by cutting half that cost, you're now opening up profitability and economics that allow them to operate to more places and alleviating all those big challenges that they have on the environmental side. So this is a story of doing really well economically while also doing really well for the world. And it's an audacious goal because aviation is notoriously hard for bringing new technologies into. And so that's really where our challenges have faced. We just passed our 8-year anniversary as a company and have made really wonderful progress and are currently the leader in the world in hybrid electric aviation.
This is amazing. And we're going to talk about that 8-year journey. I know one stop on that journey was the Techstars Energy program in Norway. I think that's where we first chatted a bit. And it's really, I love it when entrepreneurs are taking on these really challenging things that really are good for the world, good for customers. But I got to imagine, driving into that industry, as you said, really hard. So what's the time frame that you think is realistic to begin to really see this show up in the industry? Is it 10 years out or is it closer than that?
Yeah, we're about 2 years out from the first commercial deployments of this tech. So all in, that would be 10 years from when we founded the company. So that's a pretty long haul if you're counting the days. But it's actually relatively fast in the industry for how when you're bringing uh, that advance of technology into market. Um, where we're going to see the first deployments are in smaller aircraft types. So think your puddle jumpers, your island hoppers, those types of propeller planes. That's where we enter. And then, of course, working with groups like NASA and the Air Force and Department of Energy for scaling up to a larger and broader set of vehicle types.
It's amazing that we're that close to it. But I guess when you think about the automobile industry, it's sort of took a long time to come. And then when it came, it got adopted pretty quickly. And what are the challenges? I mean, I'm a little bit of a scaredy pants flyer, I have to admit already. When people see this or, consumers experience it, what is the data telling you? They're excited about it or they're a little worried because it's a new technology or, what are you hearing from people about what you're trying to do and whether or not they'll adopt it?
Yeah, so we are seeing some pretty strong tailwinds toward adoption. We're also seeing some hesitance in the industry. Aviation being safety critical. New technology really needs to be proven before it's embraced by the industry. You mentioned automotive, and I think the automotive analogies are really interesting. I mean, if you think about the first 20 years of electrification on the ground, it happened inside of hybrid electric systems, right?
Right.
So many of us think about the fully electric, present in automotive, but forget how impactful and how important it was to have hybrids. Now, this is also important in aviation because it eliminates many of these challenges and barriers to entry that otherwise might hold it back. So, for example, the range anxiety, right? You, when driving your Tesla, don't want to run out of charge. And, 10, 15 years ago, it was a legitimate concern whether you'd be able to find a charger. And in fact, when I rented an electric car over in Wisconsin, I also struggled, even in current day, to find a charger near my destination. There are parts of the world where charging infrastructure just isn't available. Those parts of the world are fully accessible to hybrid vehicles on the ground, and that's exactly what's going to happen in the air. As hybrid electric doesn't have the range anxiety because you can go plenty far. In fact, we can extend the range because we're so fuel efficient. When you don't have the infrastructure challenges, and even more important in aviation, is this redundancy. And so safety through belts and suspenders tied up together, making sure that if ever you have a failure of one portion of the system, it doesn't cascade to a system-wide failure, but just a graceful degradation. And that's really important because you always want to be able to fly safely to a destination. There is no pulling over to the side of the road with a fault or issue when you're up in the air. And so these are some of the engineering challenges and market readiness and adoption challenges. In addition, we're bridging between two pretty disparate industries. So the automotive industry, which is more familiar with electrification technologies, but works in massive scale, like millions of units. And then the aviation industry, which is not very familiar with electrification and works in smaller units and much higher regulatory bar. And so we as Ampaire have to bridge between the two, right? And that is about education and coaching and communication and a bit of hand-holding across the way for our supply chain and the regulators and the customer base. And that all adds the challenge to bringing otherwise the technology, which all things considered, the technology is probably the easy part of bringing a new company into the market.
Yeah, so something so different that you've got to educate the market and they've got to get excited about it. But that's an awesome way to kind of cross that chasm or that challenge of adoption, right? Because just hearing you talk about it, yep, that sounds better than, just the old way, right? It's a redundant system. And I think people will learn that it's better over time, just like
have with cars, right? So also, as you mentioned earlier, way better for the world. So I'm pretty good at math. I think this means you started the company in 2016. I guess Techstars would have been 2018.
Right.
At that moment, what drove you to sort of want to do the Techstars program, and maybe talk a little bit about that period of the company, and if you can think back that far, I guess.
Sure. It's good to think back that far. Uh, I I'm a first-time founder. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I mean, I read venture deals to get started, and literally watched Silicon Valley the summer before before starting.
Everyone should. Everyone should.
And yeah, right. It's eerie how correct some of those scenes are. Um, and and as confident as I am in my ability to operate and build a great business and understand my market and my customers and technology, I also recognize with a bit of humility when help is beneficial, right? I think it's really important to recognize that the world is not built by individuals; it's built by teams, it's built by communities, and it's built for communities of people. And so those connections and that help is important to seek. What we saw in 2018 was a need to mature our organization, but really at the founder level, at the strategic level, at the global access and the kind of brand recognition level. There were so many places where we felt just slightly less mature than we knew we had to be in order to be at the global scale successful. Tied in with that, we saw this immense trend toward electrification, where the big energy companies were driving a green transition. So instead of being oil companies, they were becoming clean energy companies. And we also saw, in particular, the first countries in the world making announcements about wanting to go fully electric with their aviation. So Norway made that announcement in, I believe it was early 2018, that tied right in with this Techstars program for energy, sitting in one of the large energy companies in Norway, Equinor, partnering with some folks at McKinsey who brought in a whole lot of know-how and advice, and then putting us right next to that early adopter customer, government subset, and stakeholder group. That tied with the standard Techstars kind of a stack of mentor madness and building a strong community of other entrepreneurs and specific skill sets growths. It was clear to us that it would fill many of those gaps that we had felt as entrepreneurs, as first-time entrepreneurs, and ultimately was the right move for us to jump in.
Awesome. And it sounds like another part of the journey would have been, I mean, I assume this is not a cheap thing to go and do in the world. So you must have had to raise some capital along the way. What's that journey been like? I know people are thinking about raising capital today. It's harder maybe than it was, 5, 6 years ago. But talk about the experience of raising money for such an ambitious idea.
Yeah, so absolutely critical to be able to raise money. Like one of the core skill sets of an entrepreneur, and it's about being able to establish and communicate a clear vision for where you want to go and what is it really going to take to get there, and then to find the right partners. A lot of early entrepreneurs forget that investors are not bags of money. They are actually people, and that they are partners on your journey. And this is really important. I mean, just as recent as yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, I had some of my top investors in Ampaire, not a board meeting, just an ad hoc, bring them together, deep dive for 2 hours on what is Ampaire's next fundraise going to look like. How are we going to structure it? Who are we going to go for? What are the different relationships we're going to bring in? What is the story? What's working in today's market? What's not working in today's market, right? The world changes alongside the company, and you have to always impedance match the two. And so these are areas where it's not just about the act of going out and pitching investors and trying to land a big term sheet or something. It's actually about finding the people who are going to be there with you on the journey. I have been really, really lucky at Ampaire to find phenomenal investors for our organization. Fundraising for our organization for most is not easy. It's a laborious process that you have to talk a lot to a lot of different people in order to find that right fit. But what I'm really blessed with is the fact that anybody who comes into a company as audacious as Ampaire, trying to change the future of aviation, and who does so in the pragmatic way of hybrid electric upgrades to planes rather than eVTOL or some other far future thing, right? This is an interesting middle ground of people who are not just absurdly optimistic and looking for shiny objects, but who are also willing to make big bets on hard things. And those people end up being really well aligned and resilient. And so over the course of, I don't know how many different discrete fundraise, call it terms I've raised on, probably coming up on nearly 10.
Wow.
We have pulled together some phenomenal folks, and are to date have raised about $30 million in equity. And then also aviation is really important to not just go on dilutive equity. So we have a lot of non-dilutive funding. So grants, government contracts, our work with the DoD and NASA and Department of Energy that help leverage every dollar that's put into Ampaire. So an invested dollar goes much further with this strategy that we're implementing. And from there, we've been able to fund the great achievements that we've made so far.
Incredible. Yeah. And I think especially in today's market, thinking about those, other sources of capital is really important. I've been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs about revenue loans or debt structures. It doesn't always have to be venture capital, depending on what you're going to do with that money. That can be really, really expensive. And I think in times like this, look at every option. Thanks, by the way, for saying that investors are not just bags of money, that they're actually humans. I don't know. We're bags of really small checks, I guess, over here at Techstars. It's just small amounts of money, but
done how many companies? Like,
I think we're around today, as we're talking, around 4,400. But I get most excited about ones like this that are really trying to do something ambitious, and love to follow them and help them any way I can. I want to talk about that journey, though. I mean, you're well into it, and I'm sure you got a long way to go. But what have been the most important kind of strategic considerations for tackling such a massive challenge? Like, what do you think are some of the reasons you've been able to make progress strategically?
Yeah, I mean, imagine you're setting sail across the Pacific Ocean without a GPS. Imagine you're launching a rocket to get to the next galaxy. What do? Right? You first have to know where you're going, right? And second, you can't imagine that you know every drop of water along the way. So you need to set your compass with really thoughtful consideration of what your goals are, of who you are and why you're doing the work. So this gets to the core values of what you're bringing to that journey, not just where you want to go, but how you're going to do it. And then I like to think about the tackling big audacious goals I use this term called invariant milestones. So invariant meaning that they don't change, and milestones being things that you aim to achieve. And so I want to change everything in aviation. Big audacious goal. Well, what's the milestone that you can aim for? That that as the company grows and as the world grows around you, you can focus clearly on that single milestone for some period of time, achieve it, and then just like a good orienteer with a compass, look around you after achieving the goal, course correct, and then continue moving on. And so we've set these types of invariant milestones along the course of the company, knowing that our goal is full electrification of the industry and full decarbonization, recognizing that in order to get there, we start with hybrid electric, and In fact, recognizing that hybrid electric is going to be an enduring market in and of itself, recognizing that our first aircraft, rather than building a clean sheet plane, which is a very capital intensive and relatively low return on equity approach, we're going to start with the highest return on equity approach, which is about propulsion systems. And then about how we integrate those into the aircraft that are already flying. And if anybody Googles Ampaire flights, you'll see lots of beautiful videos online about that. And what you'll see are various airplanes that are steps, invariant milestones along the way, where we were able to set our goals and achieve those milestones, look up and say, what's next? What do we need to achieve next in our roadmap? And this is the way that you achieve the big audacious goals, at least the way that I've unpacked it into a digestible bite-sized units for our organization, and made sure that we stay focused, that we are resilient to change and can handle the dynamic nature, but then also that we move very efficiently through the realm of possible into exactly what we're going to execute on.
I think I know the answer to this, and I love this invariant milestone concept. I'm going to tell you more about why I love it in a second, but I think I know the answer to why you don't call it a waypoint, because that would be like a natural flighty thing. But why not call it a waypoint along the way?
That's a really good statement. Maybe we should consider it waypoint.
I think the answer is you can change waypoints, and you're focused on invariant, which I love. I love that language. You could decide along your flight path to have different waypoints, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always talk about with entrepreneurs this sort of notion of focus and vision, and trying to reconcile the two is really hard, right? Because when you're in a Techstars program or you're trying to raise capital, like the investors always tell you, well, you need to be really focused, or they'll tell you, well, you need a big vision. And the answer is you have to have both, right? You have to be focused on something early on, probably the first invariant milestone in your world, in your language, which I love. But the vision is way out there and it's really big. And I've always said vision is useless without focus, and focus is useless without vision, just like in human sight. But I love this idea of invariant milestones. I think I'm going to rip it off, and I want to know if it's okay with you. Cool, because I feel like other people can
no attribution needed. Just take it and spread it.
I'll try to attribute it to this podcast and to you. Great ad. You also mentioned resiliency. I imagine along the way some things go wrong and you don't quite hit that milestone the way you expected to. Talk about resiliency in the context of Ampaire.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, you set audacious goals, not because you're going to hit every single one of them. In fact, if you're hitting all of them, you're probably not setting big enough goals. There are times when things don't go in your favor, when timing is bad, when maybe it's bad luck, or when you didn't execute or made a mistake along the way. And it's absolutely essential to be able to recognize those, to accept and understand what happened, and then to move on from it. There is no time to wallow, to worry, to wish, oh, I wish I could have or should have. And there's no time to deceive ourselves in what happened or what didn't happen. So, there are a handful of things for Ampaire. So, for example, a fun one is that we went down the path of going public via SPAC, which many kind of late venture, early growth stage, wannabe type companies did in early 2021, right? So 2020, 2021, we signed up for this deal to go public. I'm looking at having $750 million of cash in the bank by mid-year 2021 to split between us and a few companies we were going to roll up and go public with. And my operating budget thereafter was going to be $250 million. That was going to be transformative, right?
Sure.
As we played out that year, it became unquestionably clear that it was the wrong strategy. That even though the valuations were lofty, eye-watering, and the allure of that capital was sitting right there, always just a month or two away from potential getting closed, it became clear that the SPAC path was the wrong path for our company at that time. And so we ended up in late 21, early 22, pulling out of that deal and not moving forward with it. Now, talk about a change, right? Like I
Yeah,
went
record scratch
from,
moment, like, oh, you're
yeah,
one set of
right.
expectations becomes another. Yep.
I went from being a phenomenally funded, high growth, public company dynamic to a Series A extension raise to catch a few $1,000,000 in order to go hit the next series of milestones and show that we still had everything that we could go execute on. And that was rough. There were people on the team who were expecting to be that big company, hundreds of people and such. And we actually had to reset even across the organization. And so what's really important going through, for example, those types of things, uh, is like, what is solid enough to survive that type of a volatility? And the reality is, I believe the only things that are solid enough to survive that, number one, is a clear mission. You know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you know where you're headed. So even though you're on a little sawtooth blade, ups and downs, you know the direction you're headed, and that is clear because it enables you to make good, thoughtful decisions, like pulling out of an eye-wateringly good deal. Um, Second is staying true to your core values. So Ampaire's mission statement has a few key words in it. So it's to be the world's most trusted developer of practical, compelling electrified aircraft, from short-haul cargo to supersonic passenger transport. At the first words there, trusted, practical, compelling. It's about humility, pragmatism, integrity, and driving big impact. And it was by focusing on those key values, those core who we are as an entity, that we were able to reset without and get through some of those things without losing who we are. And that's really important. I mean, think of the boat bouncing through choppy waves. You got to have an idea of the direction you're headed, and you have to have a bit of resiliency to get through it. And then from the entrepreneur standpoint, there's those types of moments and others like they really, really test you. They're like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing for me to be spending all my time on? And I would wish entrepreneurship upon nobody, except for those people who choose it. You have to self-select into it, because if you don't self-select into it, you're not going to survive those things. But if you do self-select, if you are doing something that you believe down to your core, you are the one to get done, and that you're capable of doing it, and you know why you're doing it, then that self-selection builds the resiliency. And you got to feel it in your gut every morning. And I mean, there will be hard mornings, but you got to feel it. And that, at the end of the day, I think, is the origin point of everything else there.
Totally well said. I mean, I think if you wished entrepreneurship on somebody and they didn't actually have that mission, personal purpose, it's just too easy to quit. And that's why I never like giving an entrepreneur an idea. You got to own the idea, you got to own the mission, you got to own the passion. I'll never be able to transfer that to you. Some great lessons that you shared. Thanks. The other thing I know about you is you're a big believer in community and people. You mentioned it earlier, and I know you're giving back in the context of the Techstars system, mentoring in LA and the space program, and in other contexts with Caltech. So just want to say a huge thank you for paying that back and paying that forward to others. That's really the change we're trying to create in the world, is help entrepreneurs succeed, but help them help others succeed as well. And we see you doing that. We appreciate you, and exciting to hear the story of Ampaire. I appreciate you sharing some of the journey and some of the takeaways.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Thanks a lot for listening to the show today. We'd love to hear your feedback, ideas, or who you'd like to hear next on Give First. And please leave a rating and review, ideally a good one. And reach out anytime to podcasts@techstars.com, or on Twitter, I'm @David Cohen. See you next time. Don't forget, give first.